Can you still have an ability you can't use? Let's consider. Hello, philosophers. I'm Chico. Welcome to the Philosopher Show, where we consider the greatest questions of human history. Now, we've been talking in the last video about Frankfurt cases. Those were cases meant to show that you can have free will even if you don't have the ability to do otherwise, set up by certain kinds of scenarios, especially the one that we have with Jones and Black, where, remember, Jones was going into the voting booth. He was either going to vote for candidate A or candidate B. Black, the mad scientist, has a mechanism in that guy's brain, and if he goes to vote for candidate B, then he flips a switch, Black flips a switch, and he has to vote for candidate A. Now, it ends up being the case that Jones votes for candidate A without trying to vote for candidate B, so the switch never gets flipped, and he ends up voting for candidate A, and Frankfurt says that's of his own volition, right? That is totally his own free will, because he did exactly what he wanted to do, and yet he couldn't have done otherwise. He couldn't have voted for candidate B. So we can have freedom without having alternative possibilities. Now, before we get any further, we should distinguish between two kinds of abilities. The first one is specific ability, or something we could call opportunity, the ability to do something right now in this situation, given all the circumstances. Everything lines up for you to act. The second kind of ability, though, we could call general ability, or maybe capacity. The ability that you have in virtue of being a certain kind of agent. Your skills, rational capacities, training, knowledge, things like that. These are things that you could do as a matter of what kind of a thing you are, regardless of what your circumstances are like right now. So consider Dr. Patel. She's one of the best heart surgeons in the country. Right now, she's asleep in bed at 3 a.m. Can she perform open heart surgery right now? No. She's asleep. She's not in the hospital. There's no patient. But does she have the ability to perform open heart surgery? Of course. She has the skills. She has the training. She has the knowledge. Her general ability is fully intact, even though she cannot exercise it at this moment. Or consider a concert pianist that's locked in a room right now with no piano. Can he play the piano? Well, yes and no. Specifically, no, because there is no opportunity to do so. But doesn't he have the skills? Yeah, of course he has the skills. So he has the general ability to play the piano. So in other words, removing the opportunity is not the same thing as removing the ability. Now, apply that back to the Frankfurt case. Did Jones have the general ability to vote for candidate B? Yeah. He has the knowledge, he has the ability to reason, and all of those things, so he has the general ability, although he lacked the opportunity, right? He did lack the opportunity in this situation to vote for candidate B. And that seems immediately important. When we say someone could have done otherwise, are we saying they had the opportunity in those exact circumstances? Or are we saying they are the kinds of agents that could have chosen differently because they had the capacity to? These are genuinely different claims, and which one the principle of alternative possibilities requires makes a huge difference as to whether Frankfurt can refute it or not. So let's look at Susan Wolf and the reason view. Susan Wolf is a philosopher that says we should reformulate PAP, the principle of alternative possibilities, in terms of general abilities. And she ties those general abilities to reason. So her new principle of alternative possibilities, PAP general abilities, goes like this. An action is free only if the agent has the general ability to perform a robust alternative to that action, where robust here means the agent can recognize and respond to reasons. You need to be able to recognize what's happening and reason through, what is alternative A versus alternative B. Now, Wolf actually makes a very interesting claim, and that is that the ability to do otherwise is required for blameworthy actions, but not praiseworthy actions. So imagine somebody is standing by and sees a child that's drowning, and this person can't help but jump in and save this child. This person is of such a constitution that he can't just sit back and watch. Do we say, well, don't praise that person because he had no alternative possibility, he couldn't have done otherwise but then to jump in and save? No, we would still say that you are an awesome guy for doing so. In fact, we might even praise him more, saying like, wow, this person is so incredible that they can't help but save people. Now, imagine a boss that humiliates people for no reason. And suppose his character is such that he couldn't have held back. His cruelty is so deep that he's psychologically unable to stop berating people. Now, does his inability excuse him? Wolff says, yeah, in this case it does. Now, critics say that this seems ad hoc. To say you don't need alternative possibility to be praiseworthy, but you do need it to be blameworthy, that seems like a distinction that doesn't have any reason behind it. Wolff says the asymmetry here is grounded in the nature of the good. Being determined by the true and the good is not a limitation on your freedom. It's the perfection or the completion of freedom. Being determined by bad is a limitation. So the two cases are different in kind. Next, we'll look at Dana Nelkin's view, interference-free ability. Nelkin focuses on whether anything actually interfered with the agent's exercising of her abilities. So an interference-free ability. The agent possesses the skill, the talent, and the rational capacity to refrain from an action, and nothing actually interferes with or prevents the exercise of this power. So let's say you're walking through a park. Unbeknownst to you, a bodyguard is following at a distance, ready to tackle anyone who tries to attack you. Now, no one tries. You walk about freely, you go wherever you please, and you arrive home safely. Was your freedom of movement restricted? No. The bodyguard would have interfered if someone attacked, but no one did. Nothing actually interfered. Now, Nelkin's point. The Frankfurt cases are like the bodyguard case. In the case of Jones and Black, Black never actually interfered. Or here's another one. A hospital has a backup generator. If the power grid fails, the generator kicks in automatically. Today, the grid works fine. The generator does not come on. Would we say that the hospital lacked the ability to run on grid power because a backup was in place? No, the backup didn't do anything. The hospital ran on grid power, freely and without interference. Now, a couple of objections to this. Even if no interference actually occurred, the mechanism guarantees that Jones could not have done otherwise. So the outcome of Jones's deliberation is guaranteed in advance. And the objection goes, how could he be held responsible if you were going to get the same outcome regardless of what happened? Nelkin responds, what matters is what actually happened, not what would have happened in counterfactual scenarios. Jones actually deliberated, actually chose, and actually acted without interference. So the counterfactual doesn't change the actual causal story. You could press further, though, and say that moral responsibility requires more than just the actual causal story. It requires that it was up to the agent. And if the outcome was guaranteed no matter what Jones did, then the outcome wasn't up to Jones. A second objection is a little more subtle. Philosophers have identified cases where something can have a disposition or an ability that is masked, blocked from being exercised even though the ability is real. So, let's say a substance is poisonous. It has the disposition to kill, but it's been combined with an antidote that will neutralize it if somebody ingests it, if somebody takes it in. The substance is still poisonous, but the antidote masks this disposition. It prevents the poison from doing what it's supposed to do. In the same way, you could say that Black's device masks Jones' ability. It prevents him from exercising an ability he genuinely has. And then the question is the masked ability enough for moral responsibility? Nelkin responds that masked abilities are still real abilities. And since the mask was never activated, Jones exercised his unmasked ability freely. But again, you can go further and say, in the case of the poison didn't actually kill anybody. And in the Frankfurt case, the question is whether Jones actually had a choice. And a masked ability to do otherwise might not be the same as actually having a choice. Okay, let's take a step back from everything here and ask the question, what's really at stake here in the general abilities debate? The general abilities people are pointing to something very important about the kinds of beings we are. We're not just bundles of desires pushed around by causes. We're rational agents with the ability for deliberation, judgment, and choice. That capacity is real and significant. It's what makes us different than thermostats. You know, a thermostat will act given a certain stimulus, but it doesn't mean the thermostat is deliberating or something like that. The question is that kind of freedom, just being the right kind of agent, sufficient for moral responsibility? Or do we actually need that specific freedom, that specific ability in that specific situation to do whatever it is that you wanted to do? This leaves us with two pictures of freedom. The nature of freedom. Freedom is about what kind of a being you are. If you have the natural ability for deliberation and choice, then you're free. And that's regardless of what the external circumstances are. And in this sense, a prisoner could be free, even if the prisoner couldn't do anything. Then there's the exercise view. Freedom is about what you can actually do. Having the capacity isn't enough. You need to be able to successfully exercise it here and now. A capacity you can never use is not true freedom. This leaves me personally in a bit of a pickle here because I really like the general abilities idea. I think that is something really to that, where it is something in the nature of the creature to be free or not to be free. But then again, I also see how it's really important to be able to do the things that you're trying to do in this particular situation in order to be free in that situation. To me, probably you need both. Probably you need the general abilities, but probably the Frankfurt cases still work because you also need the ability of exercise, the ability to exercise in a particular situation, your choice. But let me know what you think in the comments, and stick around for the next video in which we'll ask the question, do I need free will in order to be morally responsible? We'll talk about semi-compatibilism. Also, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, and I will see you in the next one. Adios.